Hey, you guys, welcome back. Today we're back on the Suzukis because I know how much you love them. This particular machine here is a 2004 Suzuki RM-Z250, the first year, or for the first production year of the four-stroke racing bike for Suzuki. It's not locked up, which is great. The backstory, as I understand it, is they purchased the bike, couldn't get it running. It's got compression, albeit it feels like it might be a little bit low. They threw one of those Jungle website carburetors on there. Probably didn't jet it or anything else like that. They just threw the carburetor on there, still can't get it to start, which makes perfect sense. And my initial goal on this was to just do the typical diagnostics. We're going to pull the valve cover off and check the timing and check the compression and everything else. However, this thing's been sitting here for about a day. And as you can see, there is a huge puddle running out of this thing. It's not fuel. It's not oil. It's water. It almost feels like coolant slickery. So let me get some kitty litter down on this and let's take a walk around this bike and see what we find. Galley's keeping me company. So the tires on this thing are like brand new. Front fender is toast, and hopefully if we can get this thing running for on the cheap, we can get a new set of plastics for it. Fork seals definitely leaking. Once we get this checked out here, we're gonna see the front brakes. I can't see it right now. The radiator is bone dry, so I might just go ahead and put a pressure tester on that and just see if it's squirting out anywhere. So again, aftermarket carburetor. Gas smells good. I'm sure they just put it in there. Tank full of ethanol. Fancy unglued down grips. There's a lot of wear and tear on this thing. Clutch feels fine. Aftermarket carburetor, throttle's like really weird, not adjusted properly. The chain's actually in good shape. The rear shock felt pretty good. Back tire's good. Rear brakes look decent. I see something dripping right now as we speak. Let's go find out. It's just running off the stand here. Can't really tell. Now that I opened up the radiator though, she's dripping even more. Now that's like orange in there. That don't look right at all. Well, that's what we got. I'm gonna go ahead and get this left shroud off so I get better access to the radiator. Well, the cooling system is holding pressure for the the most part, although it is dripping faster now. Alright, let me get this tank, seat, rear subframe off. It's going to come off anyway, because I think we're going to end up pulling this engine and splitting the cases. Or at least pulling the engine and seeing what's going on. So let me bleed this off and get this apart. Alright, now we're getting to the wrong bolts. Air filter, not so good. We'll go ahead and replace that. It's a pretty little handy little tool here for taking these master links apart instead of fighting with them for with pliers, regular pliers. While I'm right here, let's do a quick transmission shift test. First, neutral, second, third, fourth, fifth. Yeah, that's all working out good. A lot of slop in them cables. The good thing is the cables look like they're new. Parts carburetor. This is still leaking quite a bit of liquid out of here. No bolt on the shifter. I'm going to go ahead and take the stator cover off. One thing I was looking for, whether or not a ton of water was going to come out of this engine. I don't see any. The oil actually doesn't look too bad. Still dripping pretty good. I got this up to about 13 psi, and she's steady, just running out of here pretty fast. Well, there she is. It's ready to fall off. Obviously this axle's in backwards. Somebody put it in backwards. The nut should be on the other side. There's little like retainers there to keep this from spinning. So if you look at the end of this, you can see it's got two flat spots. That's going to ride in the frame. You can't even hardly see it anymore since they tightened the nut up against it, but there's a little flat spot right there that'll ride against. Those of you who watch my channel know that I regularly forget to drain the engine oil before I pull these engines out. And today's no exception. I didn't let you down. So as usual, we're just gonna dump all the oil all over the bench here. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and get this top end ripped off. That's beautiful. I don't know if you can see that. Don't know what's going on there. I think somebody has these bolts threaded in to the cylinder and then maybe potentially tighten the head down and has bent this. I don't know. Claudia, where are you? No, sir, I don't like it. Wow. How many different kinds of bolts can we get up here? The answer is all of them. Yeah, this is the craziness you see. Cams don't look too bad. We're probably gonna have to do some thread repairs in here. Let's try to get these bolts out of here still. I don't understand what's going on there. Very odd. So I don't know. It looks like potentially the head is threaded and the cylinder is threaded, and instead of just drilling one of them out, so it looks like it's got a new cylinder on it, so probably aftermarket. Instead of drilling one of them out so that the bolt goes through, they tried to thread it all the way through, and hopefully it's not too bad. Alright, so the valves, the head, good condition. Does look like it's got a brand new piston in it. Definitely a brand new cylinder, brand new piston. That O-ring is completely crushed. Maybe this water was leaking down around here and coming down, dripping down off the bottom. I don't know. Alright, let me get this piston off. We put a rag over the crankcase to make sure that that little circlip doesn't fall down inside. Our bottom end feels good. Somebody's definitely been in this bottom end. This looks like a brand new crankshaft too. I mean, look at that thing. So they got a lot of goop. Down inside there between the cases, which we definitely want to redo, make it a little bit better. That shouldn't just pull off. Well, somebody cut the threads down on the crankshaft. It is new, but it looks like somebody cut the threads down on it. Probably beating on it with a hammer. That's what happens sometimes. Not supposed to do that, of course. Can't tell if the chain is new, but it's very fluid and it doesn't have any kinking, so it possibly is new. Definitely some rubbing there. This seal right here, somebody looks like they crushed it, so this would not be feeding the proper oil to the crankshaft, so that'll be a failure waiting to happen. We'll go ahead and rebuild this water pump. Yes, of course I noticed the different bolt. I made a shocked face, but you couldn't see it. Clutch doesn't look too terribly bad, but on the other hand, it's not too terribly good either. keep in mind there's a left-hand thread on these. So in other words, you got to tighten it to loosen it. I don't have the right thread size for this, but at least that will protect what's there. Now we're going to use this tool. What this tool does is these arms are going to bolt to the case, and then this center screw will push on the crankshaft, essentially pushing the crankshaft through the bearing without hammering on it or doing any kind of damage to the crankshaft or the case. This is key, my guys. Now before you do this, make sure you got all your bolts out 100%, because you could potentially crack the cases if you don't. See, the cases are opening up here, stuck right here a little bit. There's a dowel pin in here, and a lot of times that will hang up. So a couple little taps should get that freeing up. The one thing you don't ever want to do is stick a screwdriver or anything like that in between the case halves, because this is a machine fit and you're definitely running the risk of damaging the sealing surfaces. So we're just going to give it some taps so that that dowel pin will start releasing. There you are. You may have to tap on the counter shaft a little bit to get that to come through the bearing. Just lightly tap on that. These filters are already full of garbage, so I'm glad I took this apart. The bearings all feel real well, real good, so we need to clean these up. It's definitely a new crank. God, what a shame. They just like wrecked the new crank by banging on it. Let's kind of tighten that bearing. You just gotta kind of wobble it out a little bit. Alright, let's go ahead and get this transmission out. You pull your pins, then you can pull your shift forks out. inspect them for bends or wear. And then while we're looking at this, we want to look to see these little dogs right here to see they're not worn out and where they spline into the gear. You don't want to see any excessive wear. All this should rotate nice and freely. Don't lose that pin on your shift drum. And that is as far as I'm going to take these cases. I'm going to clean them up real good in the parts washer. Look at the stuff in the bottom. Yummy. And get some parts ordered, and then we'll get back on this, getting it back together. All right, so while waiting for parts, got the cases cleaned up. We're going to take a closer look at this cylinder head. We want to make sure that we're not going to have any issues when we bolt this thing back together. First thing I want to do is make sure all these valves are sealing and we don't have an issue with a potential bent valve that somebody just didn't notice. Happens all the time. And also I want to check the plane here, since they tighten this head down a little bit wonky. We're going to go ahead and measure this out to make sure that the head's not warped. The quickest and easiest way to test this here is with your spark plug in, is just fill the combustion chamber up with, you could even use water, but something that's going to penetrate a little bit better. Brake parts cleaner works fantastic. So I can already see the level dropping here. So we definitely have a leak. And we got liquid coming out of the intake port. So our intake valves are leaking. And the exhaust seems to be dry. If it doesn't seem like it's leaking at all, you can blow some air pressure into these ports and look for bubbles. So sure enough, right there. This one seems to be fine. A little bit of a leak there, but I got a lot of pressure on it. and a little bit there. But this valve here is going to be the one we're going to be most concerned with. So next step here, I'm going to drop all the valves out of this and check to make sure it is not bent. Oof. Wow. Wow, that's insane. You can see them valve seals, they're all cracked and damaged, so these need to be replaced anyway. Looks like somebody probably put guides in there. They may not be honed to the proper size. Alright, so I got the valve out. The point is kind of going to be moot because I'm just going to replace them. So I'm going to chuck them up with a drill and see if they're bent. It actually doesn't look bent. Here's the other intake. I don't see any wobbles. So for some reason, somebody replaced one of these valve guides, and it's just not the correct one, first of all. And second of all, there are these little lower steel retainers, supports for the spring to keep the spring from digging into the aluminum. Well, they never put it back on this one, so the aluminum has a little bit of wear to it. Not terrible. So we definitely need to get that lower retainer, get a new valve guide, and we're going to replace the intake valves. And if you go ahead and look real close at these, where this intake here, where this was leaking, you can see that it's been leaking for a while. So we're also going to have to do a 3-angle valve job on this head to restore these valve seats to where they need to be. Of course, you need to do that anytime you put new valve guide in anyway. Alright, so in the meantime, we got a box of parts here. Let's go through what we got. Fork and dust seal kit, oil filtre, front brake pads, new air filter, a bunch bunch of nuts and bolts and stuff. I'm believing this is probably mostly for the head. New bolt for the Kickstarter. Carburetor rebuild kit. He did give me the OEM carburetor on this thing. The spring for the rear brake return. A couple of liters of fork oil. A full gasket kit and a full oil seal kit. So with this here, I think we're ready to go ahead and get this bottom end put back together. We want to go ahead and inspect our shift drum as well. All of these little rises and falls and lands and peaks and valleys. We want to make sure there's no chips or damage, which would cause a shifting issue. Like I said, we don't want to lose that pin. That pin is going to notch into this outer piece here. I don't even know what they call it. As with all bolts inside of the engine, we're going to put some blue thread lock on it. $17 foot-pounds. Going to need to pay attention to the direction the seal goes in. Now, usually with these seals, the spring side, where the lip is going to go towards holding in whatever fluid that you're trying to keep in. But always double check your manual. Going to find our neutral position. On these particular ones, they're marked left, in for, I guess, inner, and R for right. So you'd have to actually be looking at the case sideways. This would be the leftmost one. This one that says in is the inside one, and the R would be the right side one, obviously. And when you put it in, and this is in the neutral position, obviously your transmission should be able to spin in neutral. And you can go ahead and run this thing through all the gears just to make sure you got it right. There's neutral. There's first gear. Second. Third. Fourth. And fifth. Alright, we don't want want to forget our little O-rings here and our oil screens. And obviously take a real good look at these oil screens, clean them very well. If there's any damage or holes in them or tears or they're fraying, get rid of them and replace them. These need to be installed with the longer outcropping towards the right crankcase. And these O-rings have little grooves in them that will sit on there. Cleaned up our dowel pins. Go ahead and get those back installed. This is a new crankshaft, but a couple of things you want to take note of to make sure that hasn't been damaged is this surface right here is important. That seal that we looked at on the outer clutch cover is what seals this, forces oil down the center of the crank to oil your big end bearing. And also, if this is an older crank, check your teeth right here for your cam shaft chain, because they'll get pointy and just worn out after a while, and then you would have to replace this side web. Now this bearing's tight, so my guess is what somebody did was put this here and then just started wailing on this with a hammer, which makes no sense to me, but you just got to kind of wiggle it and it should fall right in. If you're having a hard time getting these little O-rings to stay on, you could put a little dab of grease. And that'll hold them in place till we get our cases back together. Before I do that, I'm going to replace my counter shaft seal and my shift shaft seal. So we've got a whole engine gasket kit. These engines here do not use a center case gasket. What they're going to use is a RTV sealant or a room temperature vulcanizing cream, as they sometimes call it. And I'm going to show you an easier way to do this. I like using either Ultra Black or Ultra Gray by Permatex. I'm going to do the old waggy finger that everybody does. Don't do it this way. So on the back of your gasket package or a piece of paper or cardboard or something like that, put out a little bit of your material. Grab yourself one of these hard rollers. I think they're like 2 for $5 on Amazon. And you want to roll this in there. And now when you do this, you're going to get a nice even coat, which is not going to be squishing all that stuff inside the cases like we saw when we took it apart. Now, if we had a gasket, we would roll this out on both sides of the gasket, and that would take care of that. Just do it very lightly because we don't want to smush the stuff all out. We definitely want it to adhere and have a good coating, but a good even coating. Last double check, make sure you got everything installed. A couple of drops of oil where those shift pins go, and make sure all your bearings are oiled. Now we're going to go ahead and use a special tool to pull these cases back together. So this tool here, this goes on, this threads onto the end of your crankshaft. I'm actually going to use the nut on this because I think they changed the threads just a little bit. This center piece will thread onto this, and this will grab onto your crankshaft. And now we have this tube which will slide down. And you may have to space it up off the case a little bit, but you're going to tighten a nut here, which will pull the crankshaft through the case. We just want to try to get a straight pull through. Now the case may need a little bit of tapping right here, just so that this transmission comes through this bearing. I want to make sure that everything spins nice and free. And if it doesn't, something's binding. You have to pull it back apart and find out what's going on. And again, we're going to loosen to tighten, counterclockwise to tighten on this. And I believe this is going to be 72 foot-pounds. Yeah, this looks like a crazy concoction, but it's not a big deal. You got a spring and a little plunger, and that's going to go down inside of here on both sides. Try to do this without dropping anything. And then you got these little actuators, and one side is round. You can see that this part right here is round. So the round's going to go in, and then there's this little notch in the back. That's where that little spring retainer is going to sit. So just like that. And this thing is supposed to hold those in. Then you'll need a little screwdriver to push them in so they'll fall down inside that drum cam. Be careful about doing this over an open engine. I'm being very, very careful. You don't want to drip any of this stuff down inside these bearings, because believe it or not, even though they got oil on them, it'll lock them right up. Stuff's pretty strong. Don't forget your washer. Get a little bit of oil down here. I do this every single time. Put this oil pump drive gear on first before the primary gear. unfortunately, this is also 72 flipping foot-pounds. All right, now we're going to get this water pump rebuilt and get these seals changed out. I'm going to clean this up with a little bit of a Scotch-Brite. Make sure there's no real big nick or groove in this shaft that would cause it to leak. Now there's two seals on this. This is going to be a water seal on this side. Behind this bearing is going to be an oil seal. I'm just going to go through here and tap this bearing out. Check your bearing, make sure it rotates free. If not, obviously replace that. All right, get this cleaned up. As always, check the orientation of your seals against your manual to make sure you're putting them in correctly. So if you look down inside of here where the water pump shaft goes through, there's a little hole right there which comes out there. That is your weep hole. So like I said, you have two separate seals. You got a coolant seal and an oil seal. They will never mix. You'll never get oil into your coolant this way, and you'll never get coolant into your oil this way. So now go ahead and put the washer in the right place. Now for some reason, this spring that goes on the other side of the oil filter is on everybody's pay no mind list. Like, it's just rarely in there. I don't know why they take them out and just don't put them back in, but it happens all the time. Every time you tip this over, the gasket wants to fall out. Easy trick with that. A little bit of dielectric grease, just to give it some stiction. It's a little bigger than I'd like, but better than not having one, I guess. Like I said before, the head is threaded. These have studs, usually, that come down, and then nuts that go on the bottom. And the aftermarket cylinder is threaded. So nobody was able to figure out that, you know, one of these two needs to be drilled out. And it really doesn't matter which one. You can drill the head out, or we can drill out the cylinder. I think we're going to try to keep, since it's the aftermarket cylinder, I'm going to go ahead and just drill out the cylinder, so I can put bolts in or put studs back in. I didn't order any studs, but I got bolts that I can put in from the bottom. So I'm going to take my rings off before I put this together, because I don't really know what's going on here. And I want to measure my ring end gap to make sure that it's not going to be too tight and I'm going to have any issues. So we're looking for a 0.15 of a millimeter to be the minimum spec on that. And I think 0.55 would be the maximum spec, but we don't have to worry about that. And that does go through. And I'm not going to worry about the oil control rings, but I am going to take this back apart and make sure I set them in the proper orientation. I seem to find it easier to get the piston in the cylinder and then get it connected to the connecting rod, rather than trying to fight with that and get the rings, you know, with the connecting rod falling without the proper tool to hold the piston up. So you just want to get your cylinder and the orientation facing back to front. And then you want to get your piston in that same orientation. The bigger valves on this particular one are going to go towards the intake side, exhaust forward. So all we're going to do is flip them over, and then we can just drop the piston in the cylinder. We push it down just far enough so we can get our pin out, and then we can get that on our connecting rod. I can go ahead and get my clip back on. You want to be 100% sure that that ring is snapped into that groove on that piston. ahead and just spin this engine up, make sure everything's working free. Looking good, looking good. Bottom end is done. Now what we need to do is get on that cylinder head and get that thing built. No, sir, I don't like it. Well, I pulled the head out of the bath here, and it's definitely got issues, unfortunately. Let me get you in here and let you see what's going on. So if you remember right, we had a leak right in this area, and now that I've got this cleaned up, we take a good look at this valve seat, and it's just absolutely destroyed right here. And the other one on the other intake is also no good. The exhaust seems to be okay. One thing I need to learn how to do is to replace these valve seats. So they are a hardened valve seat, and they are replaceable. I'm just not sure how to do it. I think you'd have to machine the old ones out and then get new ones to press in, and then get the seat cut properly. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to use this head for this particular project. I will throw it in the inventory just in case someday in the future I'm able to do something with these valve seats. I'm going to have to do some research. I've never done it, so it looks like they are replaceable in some form or capacity. So this is kind of a little bit of a dilemma. I got to watch my spending on this thing. I don't want to eat all the profit out of it. So I have to do a little bit of searching around and see what I can find for a cylinder head that I can use to complete this project. However, it's not going to get done in this video. So you'll have to wait for a part 2 to find out where we go on this. As always, I want to thank all you for watching, subscribing, liking, commenting, and giving me the thumbs up, sharing, and all that other good stuff you do that make this all worth it. Well, on this unfortunate note, we'll see you on the next one.